Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Head to Head. This week, we've got two of the very best handling mid-size sport luxury sedans on the market, the Lexus GS and the all-new Cadillac CTS. But since I'm standing on the middle of a racetrack, these are of course the performance versions. We have the Lexus GS F-Sport and the Cadillac CTS-V Sport. The F-Sport gives you a totally revised suspension as well as upgraded wheels and tires. The V-Sport, you get quite a bit more. In addition to wheels and tires, you get 2 turbochargers, a couple intercoolers, you get that trick locking electronic differential straight out of the Corvette, as well as Cadillac's magnificent magnetic ride control. Now you might be saying, well, how can you even compare these two? Here's why. This car costs $59,000, this one costs $60,000. So if you're in the market to spend about $60,000 on a car like this, you're gonna be looking at these two. Which one's actually better? We're gonna find out. I can already hear your heads exploding from this side of the internet. How can you compare these two? That one makes more power. Well, aside from the fact that we do that all the time, I'd like to point out that the GS is something of a giant killer. We recently featured it in a comparison test against a BMW 535i, the Audi A6 with a supercharger, and the Infiniti M37, all of which make substantially more power. Yet, after about 1,000 feet, it became obvious that that test was a battle for second place. That's how good the Lexus GS is. The V-Sport is untested. Sounds good on paper, but does it have what it takes to dethrone what I consider to be the king of the segment? This is gonna be a fun one. We're starting off in the Lexus GS F-Sport. Now the GS was all new for last year, except for the engine. It was a carryover engine. 305 horsepower, 277 pound-feet of torque. Not a lot for the segment, but the GS is extremely light. So let's see what the numbers are. Launching this car, if you try and do anything funny, it just sort of starts upshifting. So I just turn everything off, put it in Sport Plus mode, and floor it. 60 miles an hour is going to happen in 5.4 seconds, and that V6 is going to hustle us down the quarter mile in 14 seconds flat at 101 miles per hour. And now we do our 60 to 0 braking test. A little bit of drama, but the Lexus GS stops from 60 miles an hour in 110 feet, which is good, but not exceptional. All right, here we are in the Lexus F-Sport, and this is a great car to drive. You know, we're going around doing limit handling on our figure 8 track, and it's balanced, it's light. You can actually feel just how light this car is. The way it turns in, the way it responds, how you don't have to get on the brakes too hard, even though you're moving at a pretty good clip of speed. Little bit of understeer maybe, but then you put the throttle down, you get a little bit of tail out oversteer. Very, very good car, very neutral. Little pushy, but you know, hey, it's a family sedan at the end of the day. As far as time goes, it can do the figure 8 in 25.4 seconds, which is a very good time. And so the Lexus is relatively quick, but as we know, the V-Sport here has 2 turbos, so it will be quicker. How do you launch it? Basically, at right around 2,000 RPMs, you're going to get off the brakes. You want to put a little bit of spool up into the turbo so it's producing as much torque as possible, but it is such a torquey motor that if you have too many revs, you're going to get some wheel hop and you're not going to go forward. So, here we go. Okay, we're flat, we're going. And the V-Sport here is going to hit 60 miles an hour in 4.4 seconds before dashing through the quarter mile in 12.8 seconds at 111.9, call it 112 miles an hour. And now we do our 60 to 0 braking test. Let's put my cameraman's head to the window because this car stops in 98 feet from 60. That is the best stopping sedan we've ever tested, full stop. Amazing. Now we're taking the Cadillac CTS-V Sport around our figure 8, and this is such an incredible car. This is actually why you buy the V-Sport. The way it handles, it's just incredible. Nothing but grip. And then the real party trick is you've got that trick electronic locking differential from the Corvette. And so it's a rear-wheel drive car where you can actually put the throttle down mid-corner. And it's like driving an all-wheel drive car. It lets you use the throttle to go around corners faster. If you don't goof around and kind of keep the car pointed where it should be pointed, it'll go around the figure eight in 24.7 seconds. And we have a saying at Motor Trend that any car that can get into the 24s is a very good car indeed. I'm up in the canyons inside of the CTS-V Sport. I remember the first time I saw it at the New York Auto Show, the one word that kept going through my head was swagger. And I think the CTS and the CTS-V Sport especially just has it in spades. It is just like, wow, what a great looking car. Wonderful, informative steering. It lets you know what the front wheels are up to. Tons of grip, good turn in. This is how I would set up a sedan. I even like the sound of that engine. Normally a V6 with turbos, it's not going to sound so good, but it's aggressive. It's got this bark and this growl to it, like, come on, come on. As for the names, V-Sport and F-Sport, for their flagship or near flagship cars, that's the best they can come up with, F-Sport and V-Sport. Wouldn't it be better if this was the Sedan DeVille? And wouldn't it be better if the GS was called the Flaming Diamond Rainbow or something? But it just, GS, CTS, doesn't matter though because the cars are brilliant. 420 horsepower, 430 pounds of torque, and it's turbo torque, so it's available from like 1,500 RPMs on. And it just screams down a canyon road like it's nobody's business. I mean, it's really only in the last decade or so that Cadillacs have been able to just attack a road like this. It's a total transformation of the company, and I say it's a great one. It's just crazy, like, this is, and I've driven them, this is better than the Mercedes E550. This drives better than the BMW 550i. I like this better than the Audi A6. But there is one car that I've driven on this very road that I liked quite a bit, and that is the Lexus GS Sport. So I think we have to hop in that one and see how it does. And now inside the F Sport, and man, Lexus did such a good job with this car. As we talked about, front of this car is hideous, rest of it looks pretty good, but the interior is quite impressive. It's actually one of the nicest interiors on the market. You've got to see this little center arm piece. The whole cabin's nice, and knobs, big metal knobs. It feels like a Marantz from the 70s, like a real stereo. Tuning and volume, that's all we want. Dear auto manufacturers, knobs, please give us knobs. That's all we want. As for driving, Lexus did an incredible job with this car. It's not as powerful as the V Sport by any means, but you can get rocking and rolling around a canyon. And the big difference between the two is how light this feels. Now on paper, there's about a 100-pound difference. The Lexus is 100 pounds lighter than the Cadillac, but up here it just feels smaller and lighter. I'll even call it a driver's car, because here we are, 80 miles an hour up a canyon road, just hauling in this thing. Loves to corner, great turn in, such an elegant car. Just wow. Lexus, who knew? And think about this, two of the best driving sedans in the world are a Lexus and a Cadillac. I mean, where are we? What planet is this? So again, I know some part of my brain is telling me that the V Sport is better. You get more power, you get more differential, you get more stuff. But boy, up here in the canyons, I'm having a very hard time telling these two apart. This Lexus is so good. So what I'm proposing we do is that we take these two to a racetrack and settle it the old-fashioned way. Okay, here we are at our home away from our home away from home, Buttonwillow Racetrack in lovely Buttonwillow, California, and we finally got the CTS-V Sport on a racetrack, and wow, what a vehicle! Just so you know where I'm at right now, I've got the mode selector in track mode, meaning I have the stiffest suspension settings possible. I've also got full throttle response. I have the 8-speed automatic transmission in manual mode, so I'm able to control the gears I want. Going down the back straight here. This thing just hauls. There's so much power. And now we're going through my favorite part here. We have the S's, and this is where that magnetic ride suspension really pays off. You can just hammer on these things, and it's like the faster you go, the better it is. Just incredible, this car. Cadillac, who knew? The control is almost like you have an all-wheel drive car, but you still get a little bit of rotation, and it's fun. I wish there was some kind of better transmission. A manual would be totally awesome in this situation. A good dual clutch. Neither exist. And aside from that, that's kind of it. I mean, this is just a wonderful track car. I'm really amazed by this thing. Let's see how that Lexus does. I'm in the Lexus GS350 Sport here on the track. I have got the mode in what's called Sport Plus, so that gives me maximum throttle response, maximum fast gear shifts, and the adjustable suspension is in its stiffest setting. And what a great track car as well. All right, now we're going through those S's, and these are beating the car up a lot more than they were in the Cadillac. You're getting a lot more secondary movements after the bump is done. And of course, on the straight here, there's just not nearly as much power. Brakes feel pretty good. They're not as good as the Cadillacs, but they will drift. It's a nice little fun car. You know, it doesn't have the fancy differential that the Cadillac has, but it doesn't need it either because it's making so much less power and torque that you can kind of go flat whenever and you're waiting for the car. And it's unfortunate, you know, and you get into it's one of those weird things that Japanese luxury brands like to do where, you know, they're like, this is the engine you need. You can't have a more powerful engine because you don't need it, even though you might want it. You know, supposedly there's a GS350 coming, but, you know, no one's seen it. We've been hearing that rumor for years and years. And it's too bad because this chassis can handle a hell of a lot more power. It really, really could. More power and more tire, too. You put those P0s from the V-Sport on this thing, and it would be a lot better. Well, try as hard as that Lexus did, and it tried. It's just no match for the CTS-V Sport. The Cadillac was better at the track, the Cadillac was more fun up in the canyons, and it is just cleaning up here on the racetrack. It's really no competition. It's funny because a little while ago we took our long-term CTS-V wagon to the Nürburgring, and that's when they were developing the new CTS, and no one knew anything about the V-Sport at the time, but it was pretty obvious to our ears that we were hearing some turbocharged cars whipping around the ring. And they looked great, and now I'm driving it, and it totally makes sense. What a vehicle. What an impressive performance sedan. The winner of this head-to-head, by quite a bit, is the Cadillac CTS-V Sport. It's just so good. Cadillac, bring on the V, and don't forget the wagon.